Good evening and welcome to the launch event of this important national program, the Spotlight Initiative to End the Violence Against Women and Girls in Guyana. I am Mondale Smith.
Good evening, Mondale. Good evening to all of you watching, listening, and joining us on social media. I am Michelle Abraham Ali, and tonight we are in the studio, but we are adhering to all of the COVID-19 preventative measures right here in the studio, and our masks will only be off when we appear on screen to introduce each segment of this show. And of course, we should let you know that Mondale and I, we are the only ones in the studio tonight. Our production technical team, they are in another room across from us. And all the persons who are going to be appearing in tonight's show, they have been pre-recorded to avoid any in-studio presence. There are going to be presentations tonight by international and national guests. Mondale.
Thank you very much, Michelle. Before we get into the program, however, allow us to share some background on the focus of this very important initiative. Violence against women and girls is an egregious human rights violation that cuts across all countries and cultures. It hinders the achievement of women and girls, human rights, and their ability to live and love and reach their full potential in safety and dignity. Eliminating violence against women and girls and achieving gender equality and women's empowerment is therefore a prerequisite to achieving the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, as we should be aware.
That's right. And now in September 2017, the United Nations and the European Union launched the Spotlight Initiative. It's a global partnership to eliminate all forms of violence against women and girls. Backed by a financial investment of 500 million euros, this initiative will operate in 5 regions: Africa, Asia, the Caribbean, Latin America, and the Pacific, and respond to all forms of violence against women and girls, with a particular focus in specific regions on domestic and family violence, sexual and gender-based violence, and harmful practices, femicide, trafficking in human beings, and sexual and economic labor exploitation. In line with the 2030 Agenda, this Spotlight Initiative will fully integrate the principle of leaving no one behind and adopt a multi-stakeholder approach. So the Spotlight Initiative that we're launching tonight, it aims at ending all forms of violence against women and girls, targeting those that are most prevalent and contribute to gender inequality across the world.
And of course, Michelle, Guyana is one of 6 Caribbean countries to benefit from this transformative initiative. The other Caribbean countries are Jamaica, Haiti, Trinidad and Tobago, Grenada and Belize. The overall vision of the Spotlight Initiative, for those that are not aware, in Guyana, is that women and girls realize their full potential in a violence-free, gender-responsive and an inclusive way. The Spotlight Initiative will directly contribute to the achievement of 3 of the Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs. Goal 5 on gender equality, Goal 3 on good health and well-being, and Goal 16 on inclusive and peaceful societies. The program will contribute to the elimination of sexual and gender-based violence through the creation of a broad partnership with civil society, government, private sector, media, among others, and build a special movement of women, men, girls and boys as champions and agents of change at the national level. Subnational and community levels, a specific focus will be on reaching and including in the program women and girls who are often isolated and most vulnerable to sexual and gender-based violence. Michelle.
So tonight, ladies and gentlemen, tuned in on social media and of course live on the NCN network, the Spotlight Initiative in Guyana will focus on women and girls affected by family and gender-based violence, including those with disabilities, indigenous women and girls, migrant women and girls living with HIV, those living in poverty, and those living in urban and rural settings. As our program continues tonight, you are encouraged to share your comments on our social media platform. Remember, we are streaming live on the United Nations Guyana Facebook page as well as the NCN News Facebook page. And we will highlight your comments. We'll actually try to respond to some of those comments during the show tonight.
And of course, we will now move to the first of 4 segments of tonight's program. And in this segment, we will see a Global Spotlight Initiative videos. We will hear messages from global EU and United Nations representatives. Marjorie Jagger, EU Deputy Director General for the Director for International Cooperation and Development, Amina Mohammed, Deputy Secretary General of the United Nations, and we will also hear from various national stakeholders on their perspectives on gender-based violence in Guyana.
Welcome to the Spotlight Initiative.
Ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues and friends, I'm greatly honored to be speaking at the launch of the Spotlight Initiative in Guyana, since the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic prevents me from being with you in person. Allow me to address you with this video message. The pandemic has hit us all. My thoughts and my prayers are with those fighting against the virus and with those who are grieving the loss of their loved ones. The Spotlight Initiative is about ending the violence against women and girls. It is about ending one of the most widespread, persistent and devastating human rights violations, ladies and gentlemen. But COVID-19 has worsened the situation. It's causing the alarming rises in the level of violence against women and girls in countries worldwide. The European Commission works on ending violence against women and girls in countries of Europe. But we are also determined to tackle it in our partner countries and, of course, with the government and the civil societies. To do this, the European Union is collaborating with the United Nations and has launched the Spotlight Initiative. So far, we have invested 500 million euros in the Spotlight Initiative, and we are currently working in 25 countries and 6 different regions. In Guyana, more than half of ever partnered women have experienced at least one form of intimate partner violence in their lifetime. Half of said victims sought no help. This is worrying. For this reason, the European Union has decided to invest 3.2 million euros for a dedicated country program in Guyana. We will work on legislation and institutional strengthening. We will boost the prevention efforts and then increase and adopt support to victims, improve data collection and support women's organizations. The Spotlight Initiative is about working together, be that with the partner countries, civil society, girls and boys. Boys are extremely important, or traditional or religious leaders. The development of the Guyana Country Programme was a joint effort between all these actors, in which the government and civil society has played a hugely important role. Partnering with the government, Spotlight Initiative in Guyana is undertaking to introduce a case management system for survivors and their families, and to orientate the teaching curriculum more towards the health and family life education. And the civil society played a crucial role, and sharing experience, the eye and ears on the ground, and also both at the governance level and implementation level. I'm convinced that the Spotlight Initiative will build on a very long-standing leadership, innovation and expertise of Guyanese civil society organizations. And on the occasion of this launch, let me use this opportunity to thank you all, to thank you for your hard work, for your dedication to this cause, and for your drive to bring the change. And we need a change. We need to end this horrible violation of human rights. Let's end the violence against women and girls. Thank you very much.
Excellencies, dear friends, it is a pleasure to join you to launch the Spotlight Initiative in Guyana, alongside His Excellency President Ifrane Ali and Ms. Marjeta Jega, European Union Deputy Director General for International Cooperation and Development. The United Nations has just marked its 75th anniversary amidst a global pandemic. In January, we launched the Decade of Action for the Sustainable Development Goals with the ambition to accelerate implementation. We also started a year that marked the 25th anniversary of the Beijing Platform for Action, its ambitions for women's rights and gender equality reflected in SDG 5 and across all the goals. Only a month later, however, COVID-19 loomed, a crisis that now threatens to reverse hard-fought gains. Guyanese have experienced hardships and uncertainties as a result of this crisis. The recent elections also proved to be a challenging test for the country. In this context, there is an urgent need to accelerate efforts towards equality, respect and inclusion, built on consensus, dialogue and the rule of law. As the Secretary-General shared last month during the SDG moment, even in the face of the most difficult crises endured in a generation, transformation is still possible. We have what it takes to eradicate poverty and hunger, tackle climate change, deliver gender equality, and achieve all the 17 global goals. We need concerted and strategic action. These goals, however, will remain elusive until each of us can live a life free of violence, fear, and insecurity. Violence against women and girls poses a grave threat to sustainable and inclusive development, to the fulfillment of human rights, and to our hopes of building peaceful societies on a healthy planet. And now the COVID-19 pandemic has widened gender inequalities everywhere and led to exponential growth in gender-based violence. Guyana has been no exception to this alarming surge. Indeed, violence has escalated from levels that were already amongst the highest of any country in the Caribbean and Latin America. The Spotlight Initiative, launched in 2017 by the European Union and the United Nations, can be an important part of the picture. It will join and complement existing action to end gender-based violence and family violence in Guyana by supporting efforts led by civil society and women's rights movements that have always been at the vanguard of change. With $4 million from the European Union, the initiative is making a sizable investment to advance gender equality and to eliminate all forms of violence against women and girls in Guyana by 2030. The United Nations is committed to supporting the government, the institutions and the people of Guyana in collaboration with all relevant stakeholders in this vital work. We wish you all the best. Thank you.
My work to date have supported the elimination of violence against women by advocating strongly for measures to be put in place that will help women, especially survivors. Survivors like myself, we have challenges, and what is needed for women who would have survived is a sustainable livelihood program. For example, a sustainable survivors fund that will help women who would have experienced violence to thrive and to survive, because the systems that are put in place does not necessarily always work. And through speaking out and speaking up and advocating all the way to the office of the president or the ministry of the presidency to have persons who are in charge of the resources to make the resources available so that women can thrive after they would have endured such a heinous bout of violence.
Gender-based violence is a national issue, and it has been one that has been plaguing the disability community over the decades. As a disability rights advocate, I've been doing a lot of work, especially with women and girls living with disabilities, to sensitize them on their rights as women and girls, and more so women and girls with disabilities. We have evidence of many persons with disabilities suffering various forms of abuse, but very little has been done. So as an advocate, we have been trying to change the status quo in relation to gender-based violence in persons with disabilities.
As a constitutional commission, we have 14 mandates set out by the Constitution which guide our work. We consult our stakeholders regularly in all 10 regions of Guyana on our mandates and strategic plan, which includes gender-based violence. We have made recommendations to the National Assembly on an annual basis, and to date, we have made more than 70 recommendations on various issues relating to gender empowerment.
Women Refuge Guyana engage, educate, and empower families from inside the community. Through self-esteem training, persons are comfortable to report cases of violence they have experienced. This then results in us doing more in-depth work with communities, families, men, and households. We also support persons to report sexual abuse, rape to the police. Unfortunately, sometimes these cases end up in a cold file due to lack of integrated systems working coherently to bring perpetrators to justice. Working from inside communities is our way of combating gender-based and family violence.
The judiciary of Guyana plays an important role in the response to combating gender-based and family violence. Over the years, there has been training of magistrates and court staff. Magistrates' court offices are now outfitted with interviewing rooms for victims of such violence who seek assistance in making applications under the Domestic Violence Act.
The response of the Rights of the Child Commission is two-pronged. Firstly, at our outreach sessions, which have been held countrywide, we explain to participants what is domestic violence and family violence, and we discuss several scenarios in which it can be encountered. Our commissioners would also discuss with these participants what to look for, since it takes on various forms, not only physical, but also emotional and psychological. Sexual violence is also emphasized with in-depth information on the contents of the Sexual Offences Act being shared. Secondly, through the Commission's complaint mechanism, its investigative officer and the investigative subcommittee of the Commission actively follows up on any complaints in relation to violence involving children. Collaboration is done with the Child Care and Protection Agency.
Over the years, the Guyana Women Minors Organizations has been responding to cases of gender-based and family violence. However, we have amplified our efforts through the Dawn Will Come project, which to date has responded to over 300 Guyanese and Venezuelan families, from offering free translation services, food aid relief, to temporary housing. We have also referred cases to and partnered with organizations such as IOM, HIAS, PADF, and RCBG to offer assistance to victims. In addition, we have reached over 2,000 persons through various publications.
Equal Guyana, as a relatively new organization, has developed new ideas and methodologies to address gender-based violence. This has included the utilization of the visual arts in collaboration with mental health services to ensure that there is a holistic idea and that persons' issues are addressed through a new and innovative methodology. Through activities like Art Splash and 16 Days of Art, we have continued to raise awareness and to help persons to develop new coping mechanisms.
At Women's Wednesdays, our work focuses on providing access to information and connecting women and LGBTIQ persons to the resources they need. We have, through multimedia and on-the-ground community activism, been sharing information on sexual and gender-based violence and reproductive rights. We aim to challenge harmful norms and beliefs as these contribute towards the culture of violence and inequality that we have in Guyana. Through public education and leadership building, we let women know the abuse they have been conditioned into believing is okay, is not, and can have significant impacts on their physical and mental health and that of their future generations. We continue to work in collaboration with women's rights movements to support the work of women's liberation because we know that they deserve more.
The Guyana National Youth Council, GNYC, provided oversight for the implementation of consultations in at-risk communities across Guyana for youth crime and violence, where we explored and compiled the factors that trigger this public health threat. In addition to this, we have worked in collaboration with UNHCR to address the vulnerabilities of the migrant population to exploitation and gender-based violence.
My private sector background has enabled my participation in numerous initiatives over the years regarding gender-based and family violence in Guyana. More directly, at Caribbean Container Inc., we have effectively incorporated policies that prohibit gender discrimination, violence, and sexual harassment in the workplace. We hope that by stringently enforcing these policies, our employees will gain perspective that would strengthen their own stand against gender-based and family violence.
This approach will enhance some of the measures that are already in place and will provide the necessary support to those issues that are still in the pipeline. In this regard, we need community intervention measures such as counseling and guidance to victims and perpetrators of domestic and family violence. We need to bring more men on board in this initiative to help influence men who embrace violence against women as their right.
I expect to see lots of culturally responsive training, publicity, and education to enlighten the public, especially those at the grassroots level, about the silent menace of gender-based bashing.
The resources being distributed under Spotlight Guyana to support the work of local women's organizations can greatly help in building the capacity for sustainable and collaborative work. There are better opportunities for rural and indigenous women and girls to access support and services that usually do not reach them. We have had a fairly centralized advocacy framework, and I believe the support from Spotlight Guyana can contribute towards the decentralizing of advocacy initiatives that supports vulnerable communities.
The Spotlight initiative would provide the disability community with much needed resources to ensure that persons with disabilities can be aware of their rights. Additionally, they can also be aware of the services available to persons suffering various forms of gender-based violence. Presently, very few persons with disabilities are aware of the services available to them and the pathways that they can travel as a victim of violence.
I think that the New Spotlight initiative can definitely play a role in developing new mechanisms, new methodologies, and more holistic methodologies. Throughout time, we've seen everyone working in their own little facets and developing their own projects that were very specific. However, Spotlight offers a more holistic and general perspective, giving many organizations and many persons the resources that are required to address the issue from a national macro level.
Spotlight initiative can definitively shine a light on the greatest form of exploitation of women, which is human trafficking. Stacked Odds, a new report that is out, shows that 99% of all women and girls are victims of forced sexual exploitation. 84% of all women and girls are victims of forced marriage. And 58% of all women and girls are victims of forced labor. Spotlight can do a great service of speaking to this issue of modern-day slavery, because if we are to really look at the genesis of violence within our society, it has an ugly history all the way back to the transatlantic slave trade. Spotlight can shine a light on men and their need to address the issue too. The issue cannot only be addressed by women alone.
In my respectful view, a scaled-up spotlight approach can make better use of statistics to highlight the existing problem of gender-based violence and family violence so that the attention of the public can be drawn in a stark way to the seriousness and prevalence of cases. That is the first step to prevention, since there are still members of the public who have doubts about its existence. Further, education of the public in aggressive ways using media in all forms, including social media, would go a far way in providing knowledge so that persons can check their behavior and attitudes and those of others. It is important for people to understand that gender-based violence and family violence are not private matters, and that the public must get involved to ensure protection of those who are vulnerable. And from the RCC's perspective, children would be part of this vulnerable group.
I think Spotlight is a great initiative that has the capacity to change the face of how persons view and respond to gender-based violence, and certainly couldn't have been more timely, especially during this period where, as a result of COVID-19, we have seen an alarming increase in violence, especially amongst women and children, and some of our most vulnerable populations, including the Venezuelan migrant community. So I think because of the scaled-up Spotlight approach being a collective of key service providers and stakeholders, the impact would be tremendous in our efforts to end gender-based violence.
The scaled-up Spotlight initiative in Guyana presents a tremendous opportunity for the country to benefit from additional resources in its fight against gender-based and family violence. Targeted intervention and technical assistance in the areas of laws and policies and institutional strengthening can go a far way in protecting our women and girls. We can ensure the effective enforcement of court-provided protective orders. We can enhance law enforcement's approach to the matter by ensuring a zero-tolerance approach is adopted by them, and we can design and implement systems for the insulation and support of those affected by gender-based and family violence.
We expect the Spotlight initiative to forge more collaborative engagements among stakeholders to prevent gender-based and family violence in communities throughout Guyana.
I believe that Guyana's response in combating gender-based violence and in fighting family violence is currently fragmented. Firstly, I expect that the scaled-up Spotlight approach would be a holistic one, in which a coordinated mechanism would be established to bridge the efforts of government, the media, the private sector, And last but not certainly least, civil society. And secondly, provide sustainable solutions to identified gaps in our system so as to interrupt this vicious cycle of violence.
Thank you for staying with us. This is the virtual launch of the Spotlight Initiative on a Saturday night. We're live on the NCN network in Linden, in Berbice, across Demerara. We're also relaying in Madhya, Bartika, Lethem and Mabaruma. We're also on the regional radio network. We're live on social media, the United Nations Guyana Facebook page and the NCN News Facebook page. It's so good that you can join us on this Saturday evening. In Guyana, the Spotlight Initiative will be implemented under 6 pillars, which focus on legislative and policy frameworks, strengthening institutions, prevention and social norms, enhancing delivery of quality and essential services, strengthening data availability and capacities, and supporting the women's movement in Guyana. There will be a multi-sectoral approach supported by government, civil society, and other stakeholders. As we continue with the launch on this Saturday evening, we will now hear from His Excellency Dr. Mohammed Irfan Ali, Ms. Omati Madre, Chair of the Civil Society National Reference Group, Fernando Pons Canto, Ambassador of the EU Delegation to Guyana, and Resident Coordinator Makiko Tanaka of the United Nations.
The Cooperative Republic of Guyana joins in applauding the Spotlight Initiative, which is being launched by the European Union and the United Nations. We view this initiative as a demonstration of the resolve of the international community to stem the incidence of gender-based violence. The Spotlight initiatives cast the glare of global attention on one of the most tragic incidences of gender-based violence: verbal, physical, and emotional violence against girls and women. The initiative is a recognition that all states have a duty, born out of our shared human values, to ensure a safe environment for girls and women, free from all forms of violence. Guyana is committed to the advancement of gender equality and the empowerment of girls and women. We are determined to make progress on eliminating all forms of discrimination and violence against women and girls. Detecting and responding to violence against girls and women, however, presents challenges, the foremost of which is that much of this violence takes place within the privacy of homes and often remains unrecognized until there are tragic consequences. Many of the acts of violence against girls and women are committed by persons they trust. The Guyana Women's Health and Life Experiences Report 2019 paints a distressing picture of gender-based violence against girls and women. The survey found that 55% of every partnered women experience interpersonal violence. 38% experienced at least one act of physical or sexual violence, and 40% had been subjected to emotional violence. My government is mindful also of the Interagency Rapid Gender-Based Violence Assessment Report in Guyana 2019, which revealed the vulnerabilities to physical and sexual violence of migrants and returning Guyanese girls and women from Venezuela. Guyana's approach to addressing violence against women is deeply embedded in ensuring compliance with our domestic laws, such as the Domestic Violence Act and the Sexual Offences Act, and fulfilling our international obligations under agreements such as the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action, the Convention on Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, the Inter-American Convention on the Prevention, Punishment, and Eradication of Violence Against Women. A national task force on gender-based violence has been resuscitated to ensure comprehensive, multifaceted, and multi-level strategic interventions to all forms of gender-based violence. The implementation of a national plan of action for domestic and sexual violence remains a national priority. The plan of action focuses on the protection of victims, prevention of gender-based violence, sexual and domestic violence, prosecutions, and rehabilitation of victims. Before the end of 2020, the Ministry of Human Services and Social Security will roll out a Survivors Advocates program to offer emotional support and crisis counseling to victims of domestic and sexual violence. The program will be piloted in regions that account for some of the highest reported cases of violence against women. A hotline number will be launched to specifically receive reports of domestic violence. We will also work with religious, community, and women's organizations to provide support services to the victims of gender-based violence. We will establish shelters and halfway homes to safeguard the victims of domestic and sexual violence. Guyana is taking steps to prevent, mitigate, and eliminate gender-based violence. I'm therefore pleased to be associated with the launch of the Spotlight Initiative. I believe it offers a platform for creating greater awareness, mobilizing financial resources and technical assistance, and for the sharing of experiences relating to gender-based violence. I wish every success to this initiative, and I pledge Guyana's full support. I thank you.
Women and girls have a critical role in our society and across the globe. Yet 1 in 3 women will experience some form of violence in their lifetime. Spotlight has created a global partnership for eliminating violence against women and girls. Spotlight embraces the work of grassroots and civil society organizations, and in Guyana will scale up the interventions in high-risk communities. Civil society organizations have been for a number of years responding to women and girls who've experienced violence and have taken many leading roles in national campaigns for preventing violence against women and girls. Spotlight has created the space for civil society to have a significant role in the overall initiative. In Guyana, the Civil Society National Reference Group, the CSNRG, has been organized to commence its role to support the Spotlight UN country team for effective implementation of the initiative. This opportunity will nurture the proactiveness of civil society to have a larger role in achieving gender equality and women's empowerment in line with the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. The CSNRG aims to have representation of urban, rural, and hinterland communities, and including people with disabilities. The key task of the CSNRG is monitoring the country program to provide feedback on the implementation and holding accountable the Spotlight UN country team. The CSNRG will focus on the indicators of success and how their achievement will create change through the 6 pillars outlined in the Spotlight initiative. There is also a clear focus on strengthening partnerships for a more integrated and participatory approach with all key stakeholders towards eliminating violence against women and girls.
Violence against women and girls is violence against the whole society. That's why the entire society has to react against it. The European Union is firmly committed to fight this scourge. We are already the first investor in gender equality across the world, and we intend to intensify even further this work. All this is reflected in the Sustainable Development Goal number 5, which is gender equality and the elimination of violence against women and girls. This objective is not only an objective, it is a prerequirement for the rest of the development agenda to work. Reflecting this commitment, the European Union is supporting the Spotlight initiative in liaison and in coordination with the United Nations, and we are giving it a global allocation of 500 million euro. Guyana, I am happy to say, will be fully part of this initiative, and it will benefit significantly from the support of the European Union. We will dedicate 4.5 million euro to Guyana, and I am very happy about that, among other reasons because the needs are there. There is a very high prevalence, unfortunately, of violence against women and girls, and we need to work to tackle this problem. I also want to emphasize that we work always in partnership with the authorities, with other stakeholders, and importantly, with civil society. Civil society organizations are a driving force behind the successful implementation of this initiative. They are essential, and I am proud to say that there is a multitude of civil society organizations, especially small and grassroots, which will play a key role in this program. But also government ownership is key for sustainability, and I am happy to see the commitment by the Ministry of Human Services and Social Protection and also of the wider government of Guyana. The EU is at the heart of the Spotlight Initiative, and the Spotlight Initiative is at the heart of the EU. We remain committed to achieve this and all the rest of the Sustainable Development Agenda, and we will work together with all the stakeholders in Guyana to make it happen. Violence against women and girls is unacceptable. It must cease. Education, accountability, and prevention are key. I look forward to working with everybody to make it happen.
Ending violence in families and against women and girls is a societal and cultural transformation, a new normal. Hidden behind the walls of private homes, too many women and children suffer physical and psychological violence at the hands of supposedly loved ones. Homes have turned into prisons, and the COVID-19 lockdown couldn't have made it worse. Gender-based violence does not discriminate between race, rich and poor, religion, or political affiliation. Gender-based violence impacts women and girls way beyond the pain and suffering. It prevents women and girls from fully exercising their rights to education, decent work, reproductive health, justice, political participation, and a peaceful and dignified life. This is why SDG 5, Gender Equality and Elimination of Violence of Women and Girls, is so important to the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. The Spotlight Initiative is a movement of partners, old and new, to create a new normal that is based on human relations that are respectful, dignified, equal, compassionate, and nonviolent. The European Union and the United Nations join hands with the governments of Guyana, the opposition, civil society organizations, activists, media, judiciary, private sector, faith-based organizations, community leaders from all ethnic groups, community organizations, and most importantly, survivors and victims of violence. The Spotlight Initiative is a 3-year investment with the generous 4.5 million euros from the European Union that must join forces with other initiatives in Guyana to catalyze wide and lasting change. Spotlight invests in prevention and response and in civil society action. As UN Resident Coordinator, I will lend my hand and voice to UNFPA, UN Women, UNICEF, and UNDP, who will implement Spotlight with the many partners and pull in the expertise of IOM, ILO, PAHO WHO, UNAIDS, and other UN agencies. Together, let's end gender-based violence and family violence in Guyana by 2030.
That was Ms. Makiko Tanaka. She is the UN coordinator, resident coordinator, with that presentation there. We hope that you are still with us and are excited as we are hearing so much about the Spotlight Initiative and the work that will be done in various communities in Guyana to help improve the lives of women and girls. At this time, we will have an important part of the program. And that, of course, is the signing of the country program document. This will be followed by a video which highlights what the program will entail in Guyana, and of course a message from our very own First Lady Arya Ali, and an original piece by some talented youth. And at the end of this segment, we will turn to our social media feed and highlight some of your comments. So here now is that bit of presentation.
So I'd like to express my appreciation on behalf of the government of Guyana, the people of Guyana, and especially the women and girls. I think this initiative will impact on many lives, and it's an absolute pleasure to work along with the European Union and United Nations to launch the Spotlight Initiative, and I believe Guyana will benefit tremendously. So we look forward to this and working in close collaboration going forward. Thank you. Thank you.
We kind of show it like that. So we really look forward to working together. I think it will be effective for us. Absolutely. Thank you. Very nice. It's been a pleasure.
One in every 2 women in Guyana has or will experience intimate partner violence in their lifetime. 1 in 5, or 20% of women in Guyana, has experienced non-partner sexual abuse in their lifetime. The Spotlight Initiative will see the UN country team for Guyana, the European Union, the government of the Cooperative Republic of Guyana, and civil society organizations partnering to respond to family violence through legislative and other measures. Family violence can be physical, social, sexual, economic, and emotional abuse, and acts of aggression within relationships that are considered as family connections. The Spotlight Initiative will introduce and build on programs geared to attitudinal change, especially among young people, address legislative and policy gaps, improve institutional capacities, enhance service delivery systems, especially in remote communities, enhance data collection and use, and build a stronger civil society response to ensure that justice is delivered to women and girls experiencing multiple forms of discrimination and violence. Nearly 150,000 persons will benefit from the Spotlight Initiative, including women and adolescent girls, men and boys, persons affected by human trafficking, women in the sex industry, LGBTQI persons, and women living with HIV/AIDS. The Spotlight Initiative will defend human rights and leave no one behind, which is the underlying principle of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development.
It is indeed an honor to represent girls and women across Guyana at this very important event. As many of you may already know, I'm the mother of a young boy, and I'm raising him to hopefully be part of a generation of males who will respect and promote the worth of women and girls. Gender equality is truly the rising tide that lifts all boats. When women and girls do better, we all do better. Yes, men too. In my message to the nation on the International Day of the Girl, I spoke of the systemic barriers to the advancement of women and girls. Those barriers do not affect all women equally, so I want us to use this occasion to think about how to tear down barriers that affect women based on their race, wealth, profession, or even sexual orientation. Even as we think about these systemic changes, let us consider the individual choices we can make to liberate and empower women and girls. If a woman needs to study, men do the dishes, learn to cook. In the workplace, men, make your workspaces places women can thrive. And even if you're in a position of power, be flexible with working mothers. Be respectful of your female co-workers. If you see a woman or a girl is being discriminated against, stand up and speak out for her. The work ahead of us is long, but building on those who came before us, we can make a brighter future for ourselves and the women who come after us. I thank you.
Our story, our hope.
It is a worldly assumption that children have nothing to worry about, besides having to get up, go to school, and come home. But what the world fails to realize is that behind one of those brave facades, a young girl cries within.
Ecstatics leave home in the morning, but reluctant to return. The only reason ensuring her return is that little boy she calls brother.
She suffers to protect the one she loves, even if it means the loss of her innocence.
Not to mention those purple spots she wishes with luck that she could cover up. How she tried anything to make it stop, but that would only end with lines and lines of profanities thrown her way, and the body with spots of purple. Once she even considered giving up, but a little voice inside told her, "Hope."
She immediately thought of her brother, not wanting to leave him in this world alone. She waited one weekend until their parents were gone, and she ran to the station to make her sufferings known.
But to her surprise, the authority she thought she could have trusted shooed her away, asking why. Why would she ever think of disgracing her parents with such treacherous lies? She did not understand why her hope had led her to this.
A place that was no refuge, filled with people reluctant to be free. Free from being blind. The blindness that caused the authorities to acknowledge not her suffering. The blindness that caused others to lose hope and are not here in this world anymore. The blindness that left the authorities wanting to save face. Save face of a perfect little town with no discrepancies.
It hurt her to know that she was on her own. But hey, at least she had her brother, she thought. That was it for her.
The last shred of hope that made her cling on even tighter, a firm grip. As long as she had him, she could do anything. She once thought of never speaking out again, but that driven force she found within her brother gave her hope. Hope and bravery to never give up.
She held her head high through the years, breaking barriers that seemed to interfere, spreading awareness and gaining support.
Then finally, after years and years of waiting, justice was served to the people who had inflicted pain, both mentally and physically, to her.
Even then, She did not stop fighting. Fighting for those just like her. Someone who had not a voice, but gained it through hope. Her voice, her equal future.
Profound expressions from our very own, our girls. This is the virtual launch of the Spotlight Initiative, sponsored by the EU, the UN, initiated in Guyana now by the Ministry of Human Services and Social Security. What an interesting program we have had for the launching so far. It is Saturday evening, Mondale, and typically persons, I know with COVID and all, you know, the fact that we've got 3,600 persons who would have viewed the program tonight. We thank you very much. That's just on the NCN News Facebook page. We have quite a significant number on the United Nations Guyana Facebook page. Just the interest that persons have taken.
At present, we've got 63 there.
63 watching actively now.
Yes, actively now. And then I have on my page.
Okay.
They're watching also. I have 80 something. It started out at 100 and something. And so the thing is, to get the message out there, after the message is gotten out there, and what happens moving forward makes all the difference. And what I do like is the content of the program thus far, but what I like this part, which is important, is feedback.
Yes.
Because feedback is of paramount importance. And while some people have opted to remain silent for now, there are some that are commenting. The comments vary, and as part of those comments, we've got one from a lady, Miss Sherry Jerrick. Miss Sherry Jerrick, who is an advocate for women and women's rights. She is a legal mind, and incidentally, she is also the acting town clerk at his time, and she spoke for a little bit there. I'm certain you can find it on the post there, one of her posts. One of the things that she said, what did she say?
She describes it, Sherry describes it tonight as an excellent and timely initiative, this Spotlight Initiative, timely and excellent, and she was actually congratulating Nicole Cole, Commissioner Nicole Cole as well. So thank you very much, Sherry, for your feedback. I'll go now to Neela Pawaru Narain, and Neela says, such a crucial initiative and forever grateful for the implementation of this program and that Guyana is being given the help that is needed.
These comments are very important, and I know some people are still digesting. Ultimately, they will have their say, and I'm expecting that not just social media, but mainstream media will be flooded with all the content that we had from today, this program that we are so far listening to all the officials, and from the average man in the street to our young people, and we're also hearing from men, the differently abled. Some say disabled, because some will ask to be called disabled, and some will say differently abled. And so I like the content, and I like the messages, and I like the fact that the program also, the initiative that is being launched here, is focused on letting, I heard one presenter saying that it is important for men and women, girls, boys, and everyone to understand that our women are important to the world. And if we hurt one of them, it's like hurting our mother or sister or auntie or cousin, whoever we're hurting. And in the process of so doing, we are ultimately, we have to first realize that it's either we recognize that all are involved or all will be consumed, because our women are important to us.
That's right.
And our girls too. There was lots of talk, and not only talk, but I saw the young women in the last presentation there, including your daughter. Yes, very eloquently presenting that piece there.
Thank you very much.
She's a good example of how young women can learn from their parents, and children are ultimate reflections of their parents, especially when their parents do what is supposed to be done. Parent them, give them the right kind of guidance and so on. And I'm happy that your daughter was a part of it. Why? Because it proved to me that, hey, a parent can still influence a child for the better. More so a girl child. She's not afraid to speak out. And that is a good thing.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mondale. And I hope that as parents, guardians, caregivers watching our program, listening to the program on the radio, or maybe we'll watch it after the program has
Yes.
been launched, because it's going to be on social media for all to review if you missed some of the presentation, because there's so much substance,
Yeah.
particularly when the president spoke and he outlined a number of initiatives that will be materialized, very soon. So we need to know, and as you rightfully said, we want to keep the engagement going. So this evening it's been the virtual launch. We still have one more segment to go, but we want to keep you, our listeners, our viewers, those of you who are watching us on social media, we want to keep you engaged. We want persons to own the Spotlight Initiative program, to follow, to hold those persons who are going to be implementing it accountable. We want to ensure that those, we saw 150,000 as the numeral across the screen of possible beneficiaries of the program. So we want to ensure that those who have been designed to benefit from this program truly benefit. And of course, the only way you'd be able to do that is by staying informed, staying engaged.
The other part that I like also is that, First Ladies are very important, and especially those that are active. And I must commend our First Lady for speaking out the way she did. And I know that I can sense that there's heart in her presentation. She's not just saying it for the sake of saying it, but she is really interested in the well-being and the welfare of the people of Guyana, and more so the girls, right? And the women. She spoke about domestic violence and the reality of us needing to do what we have to do to prevent and stem the tide of such. And aside from being a very pretty, I must speak about her physical appearance, a pretty young woman, she is also showing that education is important. A graduate of St. Joseph's, as I'm aware, and she's representing for Blue Bloods really well.
Well, since you're going to go to the alma mater of the First Lady, I must say the president, he is from my alma mater, St. Stanislaus College, so we're representing the grey and blue as well this evening. But we're still with you on the Spotlight Initiative virtual launch live on the NCN network as well as on social media. We are acknowledging those persons who've taken the time to be with us this evening: Sherry Ann Dixon, Andre Romolo. We also have Cynthia Etwaru, Kavita Rambaran, Amrita Pasod, Wilfred Mangru, Bibi Ahmad, Richard Singh. Anointed to prosper, Odessa was actually one of our very first comments just as the program got started this evening, complimenting the initiative and wanting to hear more about it. Sion Simmons, we're acknowledging Dinesh Badal, Arlene Ahmad, Jasodra Budram, Jennifer Jones, and our very own Delon Murray checking in to ensure that all things are going okay with this live presentation this evening, and doing a lot of advocacy in his own capacity in a church community and so forth. And we've got so many other persons. We just want to say a big thank you for taking the time to join us this evening. Coming up, this is just a plug that the Ministry of Culture, they do have a dance event that will be aired on NCN at 21 hours. But this was an important event that we had to air at this time. So whether you're at home or whether you're listening and you were commuting at this time, the curfew from tomorrow will be changed. But for tonight, it's 9 o'clock. So we hope that you are, safely traversing wherever you are and that you're staying safe. During this COVID season, this COVID period, Mondale, we learned we're hearing of the statistics of the increase in domestic violence. So this initiative,
that's another issue. And I know that those in authority, as well as various organizations, including religious and other organizations, are doing their part to some degree. And we're encouraging others to get on board and do the same thing too. Each one, reach one, teach one, enable one. More so, our women and our girls, they're important to us. And as we continue with the launch.
That's right. And so we just wanted to say again, thank you for your engagement. We are now going to move into the final segment of tonight's show. Coming up for you next, we will see two videos, and you're going to be hearing also on those two videos. One is going to be speaking about the Spotlight Initiative in the context of the Global Decade of Action in achievement of the 2030 Sustainable Development Agenda. And then the other video will be highlighting recent achievements from around the world as a result of the implementation of the initiative globally. Then it's going to be followed by a final message from the Honorable Dr. Vindhya Pasod, Minister of Human Services and Social Security.
The EU is at the heart of the Spotlight Initiative, and the Spotlight Initiative is at the heart of the EU. We remain committed to achieve this and all the rest of the Sustainable Development Agenda, and we will work together with all the stakeholders in Guyana to make it happen.
Gender equality is one of 17 global goals that make up the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and crucial to progressing our decade of action.
The European Union stands for women's rights and promotes them through the Spotlight Initiative.
The EU believes in the fundamental right of every woman and every girl child to enjoy a life free from discrimination, abuse, and violence.
Violence against women and girls is not only a human rights violation, it is one of the most significant barriers to sustainable development that a country can face. The Spotlight Initiative is a collaboration between the EU, the UN, government, and civil society to address the scourge of violence that women and girls in Guyana face today.
This is an effort that will confront the link between violence against women and HIV. It will promote the leadership and meaningful participation of networks of women and girls living with HIV. And it will engage men and boys as agents for change.
Ensuring universal access to sexual and reproductive health and affording women and girls protection from gender-based violence are vital targets for realizing this goal.
In the framework of this initiative, it's very important to take into account the health of women and girls, and obviously supporting them to have the best physically and psychological and development to avoid any problems in their development in the future.
Women and girls from refugee and migrant communities are especially vulnerable to cases of gender-based violence, trafficking in persons, and other violations of their rights. So it's especially important to include them when developing policies and programs.
There are more women in public office than ever before, but encouraging more women leaders at the national and local level will continue to strengthen policies and legislation in favor of gender equality.
Gender-based violence and harassment is incompatible with decent work. It is a threat to equal opportunities and to safe, healthy, and productive working environments. The ILO therefore calls on all countries to adopt Convention 190, which recognizes that a gender-responsive approach is essential to ending violence and harassment in the world of work.
Realizing the rights of every child is central to achieving the SDGs. As a part of Decade of Action, we must reimagine to ensure that women and children are protected from gender-based violence, abuse, and exploitation.
Why is the Spotlight Initiative so crucial in our fight to counter violence against women and girls? Because in Guyana, 55% of our women have experienced some form of violence. That is, over 210,000 women, or 3 in 5, were either sexually or physically abused. These troubling statistics are significantly higher than the global average. This seemingly entrenched culture of violence
demands high-impact, systematic, comprehensive strategies which tangibly provide solutions to the root cause of violence against women and girls and addresses inadequate safety nets. Safety nets we plan to improve. At least 15,000 women have experienced physical and sexual violence in Region 4 alone. Too many and for too long. These are our mothers, daughters, sisters, and friends. We need to ask ourselves why violence continues to be pervasive and persistent. The heartrending cries of women who are beaten, chopped, stabbed, raped, brutalized, and yes, killed in this most horrific form of gender oppression has propelled us to embark on pivotal partnerships with the United Nations and the European Union to significantly improve the conditions of women, foster their empowerment, and work to prevent and eliminate all forms of violence. The Spotlight Initiative is intended to help over 600,000 women, girls, men, and boys. A collective effort including a sustained multi-sectoral approach, strengthened institutional mechanisms, informed policies and revised legislation, national action plans, efficient advocacy to support services, and critical partnerships with civil society organizations and other stakeholders is necessary to create the momentum to stop this relentless escalation of violence. Violence that has continued unabated in the COVID-19 pandemic. A call to our soon-to-be-launched 914 helpline to report violence will open access to new initiatives that link survivors to agencies, advocacy programs, referral pathways, micro-enterprise industries, public-private skills, employment database matching, and offer immediate help to help extrapolate them from violent situations. I cannot overemphasize how important it is to report every incident of violence to stem the relentless tide. Violence against women impedes the social and economic development of families, communities, and the entire nation. It is perhaps the most obvious manifestation of deep imbalances of power in our society. The vulnerabilities epitomized through financial dependence, lower employment, the culture of silence in the face of violence, and tangible insecurities, particularly during a crisis when vulnerabilities at their peak and protections at their lowest point will be addressed through the Spotlight Initiative. Defending women and girls' rights entails understanding and urgently countering everything that impedes the achievement of SDG 5, gender equality. It is imperative that we continue to highlight the importance of ending that culture of silence and the acceptance of violence against women and girls wherever it exists. Violence, whether it affects women and girls or men and boys, is unacceptable. The Ministry of Human Services and Social Security remains committed to working with all partners to ensure that the human rights and dignity of all our women and girls are respected. The government of Guyana thanks the EU and the UN for their tremendous support and looks forward to the implementation of this initiative to bring about measurable outcomes in the fight to eradicate all forms of violence against women and girls. This is our chance to tangibly change the lives of women and girls as we promised at the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women and the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action 25 years ago.
I'm super excited. I think Minister brings the curtain down for us in a very nice way this evening, just summarizing the Spotlight Initiative and all the persons who are going to benefit, including those with disabilities, Indigenous women and girls, migrant women and girls living with HIV, those living in poverty, and those living in urban and rural settings.
And with that, time has caught up with us. Until we have yet another program like this, this is an initiative that you can listen out for and look out for ways that you can be a part of it. And it's on that note that we say thank you for joining us this evening. Have a wonderful rest of the night now. I'm Mondale.
And I am Michelle Abraham Ali on behalf of our technical team. We continue to encourage you to please adhere to all the COVID-19 guidelines, continue to be safe, and please, you can go to the UN Guyana Facebook page for more information on Spotlight Initiative. Good night, stay well, stay safe.
Night.